Let's talk about FODMAPs in relationship to IBD and IBS. Now, what do these acronyms stand for? Let's start with FODMAPs. Okay, so that stands for fermentable, which basically describes the gut bacteria digesting carbohydrates and producing gas. Okay, that's fermentable. Then we get oligosaccharides. Oligo means few, and saccharides describe sugars. Then we get disaccharides. That means two sugars connected. Then we have monosaccharides, which is one sugar. And then we have polyols. And these are basically scientifically sounding names for carbohydrates, specifically sugar and fiber. And all of these are a bit more difficult to digest. All right, now let's switch over to IBS. That's irritable bowel syndrome. And then we have IBD, which is inflammatory bowel disease. Now, the difference between IBS and IBD is this. In IBS, there's no ulcers, there's no lesions. It only affects the colon, not the small intestine. So basically, you have inflammation in your large intestine. All right, IBD is irritable bowel disease. It's a group of bowel diseases that cause inflammation in different parts of the GI system. Okay, both IBS and IBD are triggered by the same thing: gluten, which is the protein in wheat and other grains; refined sugars, grains; lactose, that's milk sugar; certain fibers in a lot of things like vegetables, legumes; and omega-6 fatty acids. That would be things like soy, corn, canola, especially the oils. And then if you have these conditions, you'll have abdominal pain, diarrhea, bloating, and gas. So what happens in the gut when you actually consume these foods is you get gas. And the gas stretches and expands the colon. And IBD or IBS are very sensitive to this stretching because you have inflammation. Now let me just circle back to the FODMAPs for a second. Oligosaccharides, that would be like the grains, that would be garlic, onions, legumes. An example of disaccharides would be the dairy, okay? So as you know, a lot of people are real sensitive to dairy, right? And then monosaccharides would be like fructose, and that could be like in high fructose corn syrup or fruit. And then polyols would be like the artificial sweeteners like sorbitol, mannitol. But these two compounds, sorbitol and mannitol, are also in, to a certain degree, in fruit and even vegetables. So the whole concept of FODMAPs is to consume foods low in FODMAPs, okay? Now, I listed all of those in the description below so you can see what I'm going to talk about, because you'd also want to avoid the high FODMAP foods, okay? Now, here's one little extra point I want to bring up. Many people consume the low FODMAP vegetables and other foods, and they still have a lot of GI problems. In that case, I would recommend not consuming any vegetables or legumes or fruits, and do carnivore for a couple months, and you'll find that your gut can heal and you'll feel much, much better. I just wanted to point that out. But just make sure you do the healthy version of a carnivore diet. So you're not just eating animal protein, you're eating fish, seafood, eggs, things like that. Hey, before you go, if you're benefiting from any of my content, I would love to hear about your success story.